I'm Mark Loux, Extension Weed Scientist with Ohio State University. This is an update on Palmer amaranth problems in the state of Ohio, where they are, how we know Palmer's getting here, and some of the steps you can take to keep it out. I'm not going to cover the whole Palmer amaranth issue in terms of why it's such a problem, what happened in the South, and why we're trying to keep it out. You can get that information on our website, which is u.osu.edu/OSUweeds, where we have a bunch of information on Palmer amaranth, including fact sheets on pigweed identification, a one-page front and back on the status of Palmer, why it does explain why it's a problem, where you can find it in the state, and how to keep it out, and also a link to our YouTube video site where we have a great video on pigweed identification. So you can go there for the whole story, or Google Palmer amaranth and get way more information. So if you look at our short history of Palmer amaranth in the state, we first started looking for it in about 2012. And there was one producer down in Scioto County that had had it for a while and already had a significant infestation in a big river bottom field down there. It came in, as far as we can tell, in a crepe seeding sort of about 2007, 2008. You look at the map on the right, you can see it's spread through the state. Now, having said that, we have about 2 or 3 epicenters of it where it's more severe: Wayne County, Mahoning, Columbiana area, a couple of areas along the Madison-Fayette County line, and then a couple other individual fields here and there that are sort of out of control. The rest of these, just because I have a county outlined or a square on the county, doesn't mean there's actually really even an infestation. It just means we found some plants or found a patch, and in some of those cases it's been remediated, so it's no longer a problem. But the map does show that we've had instances in a number of counties where Palmer amaranth that has come in, and I'll show you in a second where it's become more established again, and why it's more severe in those areas. We know Palmer amaranth can come in several different methods, and the key to keeping Palmer amaranth out is knowing what these methods of introduction are and taking steps right to make sure that they're limiting those as possibilities of contamination of your operation. Number one has been the purchase or movement up here of the cotton byproduct feed products from the South. Palmer amaranth's all over the South in cotton fields, so those byproducts that are sold up here as feed, some people use them in animal operations, can be contaminated with Palmer amaranth. So you feed them, goes through the animal, through the manure, and then it's spread, and that's been our number one way. As far as we can tell, the feed suppliers of this from the South really aren't taking any steps to take it out, so it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether it's in that feed or not. Number two has been, we actually have a couple different instances for each of the other two that you can see here, but number two on the slide here is contamination of crepe, wildlife and cover crop seed with Palmer amaranth. A lot of that comes from Texas, Kansas, some of it comes from the South. It's an endemic weed, it's always been in some of those areas. So it can be a contaminant of the seed production there and the seed that's sold here. The catch-22 there largely is that it's not a noxious weed in those states, even though it's a noxious weed here. So while it's not supposed to be a contaminant of seed sold here, it doesn't have to be tagged as containing Palmer amaranth. Your solution there is to have ODA come out and pick up seed, and they'll have it tested for Palmer amaranth before you plant it. They'll do it for any of this type of seed. You just have to call them and let them know, and they'll come out and do that. And then movement via machinery. So we have an area like Wayne County, and also probably up in Mahoning and Columbiana now, where contaminated combines are moving from field to field and spreading it. We have a custom silage operation up in Wayne County where it appears to be, they start in the South every year and work their way north. That's a possibility. And then we had one of the fields that had to be mowed down this year down in Warren County. Ended up in a couple fields there where the same combine had used, and they traced that back to a combine purchased, used at a local equipment dealer, though, that they figured out had come from Georgia, and obviously had some contamination of Palmer amaranth from there. And then you have isolated other ways this can come in. It can come in if you're downstream from a contaminated field and you have flood water, and then it can also be spread via birds. So, and this map largely shows the circles are where our more severe infestations are, and the map's trying to show for those what the source of contamination has been. So you can see again the cotton feed products and the feeding of those into manure as our major way that's happened. Some instances of movement via machinery, and then a couple of crepe seedings. And I will have to say that we only, aside from the Scioto County infestation that we're pretty sure is as a result of a crepe seeding, we only have one other that we know of as a source of infestation. It was a large crepe seeding in Madison County a couple of years ago that the grower, and we also felt that had been contaminated with Palmer amaranth, and he tore the whole thing up then and started over again because of that contamination. But in spite of some recent press on how bad that issue can become or has been in Ohio, it's been limited so far. Having said that, there have been some major issues with this further west, which is why it's a concern, and why we're really emphasizing the need to test that seed, because they had a pollinator program in Iowa this year, right? That they had very few infestations of Palmer amaranth in 2015, had a pollinator seeding program, and had a lot of new infestations of Palmer, and they figured out that pollinator seed was contaminated with Palmer amaranth. So it's obviously a big concern in areas. You can see on Kansas on this map shows a lot of Palmer amaranth, and that's because, again, it's been endemic there. It's not a noxious weed, it's always been there. Just to show you how bad this can get in 1 year, this is an example up in Mahoning County of a guy who took a load of the cotton feed products from a local feed dealer in the winter of 2014-15, then fed that in that winter, and then spread the manure before the growing season in 2015. Had no Palmer amaranth plants in 14, and then this is what he had in 2015. Having said that, this is a guy who's again, primarily soybeans, no residual herbicides, all glyphosate. So when he got an infestation, he had no first line of defense, and we'll talk about how important that is here in a second. We did have to mow down some fields this year in the state of Ohio. We had two up in Wayne County, and there are a couple of others right next to these that we felt should have been mowed down, and then one down in Warren County. And the deal here was they had a history of Palmer amaranth, obviously, and they ignored it. And it got to such a level this year that we came out and there wasn't even any point in harvesting the beans, really. I mean, they were completely infested, and the recommendation was you have to mow this down. You're going to have so much Palmer amaranth seed produced here that you'll basically be unable to farm it. And of course, this is what they got into in the South. They had to do this, mow down, tear up fields when it got ahead of them, just to shut down seed production to try to get a handle on it and kind of restart. And you can see here a field on the left right after mowing, and then on the right on the field a month later. In this case, the guy did not follow up and mow again or till or anything, and he had plants that rerouted and regrew after the bush hogging, and then a whole bunch of new plants that came up. So he had a major issue there. And just to kind of reiterate, in these fields, these 3 fields that were mowed, these are kind of lower budget guys. They didn't know anything about Palmer amaranth. Were ignoring it for a couple of years. No residual herbicides, all glyphosate. So they had no first line of defense. Let it get to a certain level of infestation, and then because it produces so much seed, it was just sort of game over the year that we found it, and they had to mow it down. And so I can't emphasize this need for residual herbicides enough. And of course, our use of residual herbicides, we're at 80 to 90% of our soybeans getting residual herbicides, and we had to do this to manage giant ragweed, common ragweed, and mare's tail in the state, which is a good thing because all those herbicides we're using to manage those weeds also have upfront activity on Palmer amaranth. So what you're looking for here, hopefully, from those is, should you get some Palmer amaranth seed in a field, they're going to give you control for 4 to 8 weeks. So the plants that come up later, because it tends to come up all year. This has been a problem with it here as well as in the South. Hopefully, and they escape your post program, hopefully they came up late enough that it takes them more time to produce seed. So when you're doing the scouting that we're recommending late season, and you find Palmer amaranth plants, when you have a comprehensive program in place that includes residual herbicides, they have not had time to produce seed yet. And we've actually verified this in the fields we've scouted, where it can be hard in August to find plants with mature seed where we know people have used residual herbicides. In terms of resistance, of course, one of the issues that's become a problem is it develops resistance to ALS inhibitors like Pursuit and Classic very fast, and then develop glyphosate resistance. All of our populations are ALS resistant. They're all resistant to a use rate of glyphosate, although if you go to a really high rate, you can get some activity. And we're also got some resistance to PPO inhibitors like Flexstar and Cobra starting. And of course, the problems they're having in the South with this is they have such high infestations and the need for multiple herbicides applications that they're putting a lot of pressure on the herbicides, and they've gone through ALS inhibitors, glyphosate. They're starting to go through PPO inhibitors like Flexstar and Cobra, and also apparently they have some issues with Liberty resistance starting. So one of our concerns with this weed is its ability to do that, and the need to manage it effectively, obviously, to curtail that. So what you're looking to do with your scouting, assuming you have a comprehensive program in place, is some late season scouting. Our major late season offenders are mare's tail and giant ragweed, so you're looking for something different than that. You can go by fields with binoculars. You can use a drone maybe. You can drive through fields, really whatever it takes to be able to see across your fields and look and see if you've got Palmer amaranth, especially if you have some already in the neighborhood, right? So you're trying to shut it down before it produces seed. It produces a couple 100,000 to a couple million seeds per plant. And so, when you have a patch like this, you can get in there sometime in late summer and pull it out before it produces seed. That's going to be the difference between sort of a permanent increase in your herbicide costs and a permanent infestation of Palmer possibly versus keeping it under control before it really gets started. If you don't do that, it produces so many seed, you're going to have this kind of thing the next year where you just have so many new seedlings and it's just going to keep coming at you all year, and it's going to be incredibly hard to battle at that point. And so what you're trying to do is shut down infestations before they are able to spread through fields like you see here. So this is an infestation that started on the edge of the field, and then combine blew it out through the field, or tillage or something moved it. It's brown in this case because the guy sprayed it with gramoxone to shut down seed production. So you're trying to stop it before it even does this. And even in this case, you could walk through there. A couple guys could there, and in an afternoon and probably pull out most of those plants if they had to. So bottom line is it's another layer of scouting, given that you already have a comprehensive herbicide program in place that you probably do for mare's tail or giant ragweed. It's that late season scouting, late July into early September possibly. If you come across it in corn on a combine or something you think is Palmer amaranth, you're not sure what it is, stop, don't contaminate the combine, go around it. In corn, obviously, that's going to be the first time that you can possibly see it. So plants need to be cut off. If you do find plants without seed, they need to be cut off below the soil line and removed from the field and burnt or composted. If you leave them in the field, they can reroot and still produce seed. The females in this plant that have seed are rough to the touch. They'll almost cut your hand if you don't have a glove on. If you crush those, you'll have small black seed if it's mature. If you do find small black seed, you want to be more careful about dragging it through the field and getting it out of there. Maybe pull a truck into the field and load it gently into the bed, or cut the heads off, put them in bags, whatever it really takes, so you're not spreading seed through that field. And again, this is our information and my contacts, so if you ever have any questions about plant identification, want to send photos or management or really anything related to Palmer amaranth, don't hesitate to ever call us. And our main goal of our group is still to keep it out of the state as much as we can.